before we turn it over, we are going to answer some survey questions because we want an opportunity to learn a little bit more about everyone who is here with us today. So, Dan, if you have the first survey question, if you could pull that up, that would be great. Okay, so the first question we have for everyone is this your first Wisconsin Land and Water County Con meeting? Oh, wow. Okay. That's very interesting. So we've got 31% yes and about 67% no. All right. All right. And we have another survey question.
Hang on, Kim. You
Okay.
and I can see it, but now I'm just making everyone else
got it. Okay.
able to view it. So there's the results.
Got it. Okay. Well, as everyone knows, we're kind of entering into this new land of Zoom, and we're all kind of learning the tricks of the trade. So this is the first time we've had an opportunity to do a poll, or at least first time I've experienced one. So, okay, about 67% no and 33% yes. Great. So Dan, whenever you're ready for the next one.
Here's question 2.
Okay, great. Which of these affiliations best characterizes you? So Land Conservation Department employee, Land Conservation Committee member, agency employee, or nonprofit employee volunteer, academic, or other?
Answers are coming in.
Okay, great. This is exciting.
It's like watching election night results.
I was just going to say that these are so much quicker. So is everyone able to see these?
You should all be seeing them now.
Okay. Great. Okay, 65% land conservation employee, 12% committee member, 6% agency employee, and 6% nonprofit employee or volunteer, 4% academic, and 6% other. Great. All right. Now I think we're moving into some really important survey questions. This was very helpful for Wisconsin Land and Water staff and others to know who's here with us. So these next ones are really important, so think hard before you answer. All right, if you opened your fridge right now, how local is your favorite adult beverage of choice? From right down the street, from my region of the state, from my state, from my region of the country, from my country, from beyond my country, I have no idea or not applicable. All right, Dan, are these up for people to see?
They are now.
All right. Okay. So from my region of the state, about 29%. From my state, 23%. From beyond my country, I wonder what that is.
The imports.
That's right, the imports. Okay. And right down the street, 17%. That's pretty good. Great. All right, we have another survey question coming up here.
Here you go.
All right. If your favorite beverage is from Wisconsin, are its ingredients from Wisconsin? Yes, no, I don't know. That is a good question. A lot of people not sure. About 23% yes, 10% no, and 71% not sure.
All right, looks like everybody's done voting. I'll share those results.
All right, looks like we're gonna have to do a little more research into what we're drinking, people. All right, and I think we have maybe a couple more questions.
Yep, here comes the next one.
Have you ever, or would you ever select an adult beverage solely based on how local it is to you? Yes, no, I don't know. I like the answers. About 85% yes, 13% no, and 2% I don't know.
And there's the results for everyone to see.
Great. All right, and I think, let's see, was that our last?
Yeah, we'll have some more maybe later during Marie's
Yeah, I
presentation.
think Marie will have a few more. So thank you everyone for participating in the survey. So I would like to turn it over to our own Dane County conservationist, Amy Piaget, who is actually going to introduce Marie for us.
Marie, are you in a safe place now? I see.
Yeah.
Your
Yep.
face. Okay.
Oh, good timing.
I'm here. Yeah,
Excellent.
that was perfect.
Perfect. So Marie is a conservation specialist for the Dane County Land and Water Resources Department and Land Conservation Division. She primarily focuses work on, from our standpoint, conservation practices, a lot of work with grazing and cover crop in the Yahara watershed, plus other areas as well. But her side job here is, not supplying us cider in the office, unfortunately. But she does a lot of work with this, and we get to hear kind of both sides of it sometimes. We get to hear Marie's passion about grazing and also passion about apples. So with that, I think Marie can speak best about what she's working on out there.
All right. Hi, everyone. Sorry if I'm a little scattered. I didn't quite look at my calendar right, but that's pretty typical for me, anyone who knows me. So, well, first I want to welcome you guys all to Brix Cider in Mount Horeb. I'm sitting in our production cidery right now. Dan's over there bottling, so you'll hear some very authentic background noise. And if the compressor kicks on, I will stroll out of here because then you won't be able to hear me at all. So anyway, like Amy said, I work for Dane County Land Conservation, but my husband and I started Brix Cider, which is a hard cider company, in 2017. And we started the first 2 years renting a winery facility down in Stoughton. And then also the guy who owned the winery was our mentor and kind of taught us everything we know about really making wine, and cider is just a different version of wine. So as far as the state and the feds are concerned, I'm a winery. I'm not a brewery. I'm a licensed winery. So we did that for a couple years and just distributed cider on the wholesale market. And then in early January of 2019, we opened this facility here, which is where our production is. And then we also have a tap room and a restaurant. I think the reason they asked me to talk, maybe to talk about things is one, okay, first, I don't have a cider. I should probably figure that out. Dan's bottling, so maybe I'll just like grab a bottle off the bottler or something. I don't know. But the reason they asked me to talk is I think both in the cider making and in the restaurant side of things, we take local very seriously, and we really invest in our community. And I think for us, our community is important. We're in a small town. We have to support the people around us. And I'm a firm believer in the tide raises all ships. So if our other local businesses are doing well and we can support them, those dollars are going to keep circulating within the community and eventually make them back, come back to us in a bunch of different ways. So the reason I should probably go to the title of the talk because I did it on purpose because it's a little chip on my shoulder, is I titled the talk, "You Know It Isn't Local, That Beer You're Drinking," and it's because that's true. So when we think about Wisconsin, we think about beer and how, oh, we have all these local breweries and we're such a beer state and all this stuff, but realistically, probably 99.9% of the barley that goes into all those local beers is not grown in Wisconsin. There are very few farmers in the state right now that are growing barley for beer production. And so although we have Breeze, which is it's a maltster up in, I want to say, well, it's like out of Dane County maybe, or Kewanee, I'm not sure. They do a lot of the malting for the brewers in the state. That grain coming into their production is from mostly out west, and then actually a lot of Europe. And so my argument is that the beer that you're drinking is not really local. It's produced locally, but the ingredients themselves are not local. And as far as like the community around it, you're not really supporting local farmers. It's fine. I still think I love good beer. We should all be drinking good local beer. I'm not arguing that, but it's kind of like saying if someone were to buy in a bunch of tomatoes from California and then make it into a sauce and slap buy local, buy Wisconsin on it, I think we've all kind of give them the stink eye and be like, that's not really a local. Hey, someone just said Breeze is in Chilton, Calumet County. Thank you. I knew I was wrong about that. Anyway, so we wouldn't consider that product local, yet somehow we consider craft beers to be local. So anyway, that's why I made that argument. I love all my brewery friends. I love beer. But I think it's just making sure that we understand that like our farming community is not growing that barley, not necessarily growing that rye. The distilling community is a little bit different. There are some small local distillers like Dancing Goat, I know for a fact, in Cambridge, and then the La Crosse Distilling Company in La Crosse. They do source grain and corn locally. I know some of their growers personally, so I know that they're doing a really good job with that. But breweries are not. There's a few breweries that do like a local beer and it's kind of special. But it's a very small percent coming in general. There's a small percent of the grain is actually coming from Wisconsin. So with apples, I'm not talking Angry Orchard. I'm not going to pretend like Strongbow. That's another one. Like, of course, though, that's all that shit's coming from China. Like that's concentrate. It's coming from China, whatever. But for the most part, cideries, and I'm saying for the most part because this is not always true, but at least most of the ones in Wisconsin that I know, and I know most of them because there's not that many of us, are sourcing apples from Wisconsin. And And we all do it a little bit different. Some cideries don't own orchards and just buy juice from like Kickapoo or something like that. And that's fine. Those are Wisconsin apples. That's great. Maybe some Minnesota apples get mixed in there, but I'm okay with Minnesota for the most part. I hear their governor's pretty cool. So most of the apples are coming from Wisconsin for these small cideries, which is great. Most of the apples in these bottles of cider you're drinking are probably seconds, which means they're not a crop that would otherwise be able to be sold on a wholesale market, which is also really awesome because that reduces our food waste stream, and it also gives these farmers, orchardists, secondary income for a product that they normally wouldn't have a market value for. Did I hear that compressor? Yeah, that's a set of bottles going through. So anyway, that's my pitch for local, and now I'm just going to talk a little bit about how we source both the apples and the food, because I feel like as conservationists, that's what we want for all of our farmers is we want better markets. And so if we want and expect better markets, then we need to put our money where our mouth is, and we need to start voting with our dollars, and we need to start supporting the companies that do it right. And that brew pub down the street where Cisco pulls up every week and drops off a bunch of burger from North Dakota and Nebraska, like, yeah, it's your local brew pub, but they're not doing it right. Like, I'm sorry, but like, there's no excuse for any restaurant in Wisconsin to at least not source that burger locally. So back to the apples. I got off on a tangent because that's a pet peeve of mine, if you can't tell. Back to the apples. So the way that we've built our business up over the past few years is that we've built relationships with a bunch of local orchards around us. And some of these orchards are in the wholesale business, so they are producing apples that you would buy at the grocery store that are local apples. So they're bigger orchards. They're in it for that perfect apple. With those orchards, what we're doing is going through several times throughout the season, and we'll pick what's left over, or we'll buy their second apples that were graded out on their tables. Or another example would be like a U-pick operation. A lot of times, we've all been to U-pick apple operations. We can get the apples that are at about the 7-foot level, and everything above that gets left on the tree. So what we'll do is, after a U-pick operation is done picking a section of apples, they'll give us a call. We'll come in with our crew, bring our ladders, and we'll pick the tops out and kind of pick what's left, and then obviously buy those apples from the farmer. So we always pay for the apples. The one exception is we do harvest some wild apples kind of around the Dodgeville Mineral Point area with a farmer that I used to work with when I worked for Iowa County. And those apples, they're wild. There's a bunch of cattle out there. They give us their ranger. We go out and we get what we can on a couple orchards like that. So otherwise, we're always going through and buying seconds or paying people for their seconds. The third type of orchard we work with is what I call the retired orchard. And that is, people maybe ran a U-pick operation for 30 years. I can think of maybe 3 or 4 where we do this, and they just don't run their operation anymore. So the trees aren't pruned. Maybe they're still mowing underneath. Nothing's being sprayed anymore, but we'll just go through and pick those apples and we'll buy them from the people. But we'll bring our crew out and pick them that way. And it's, these guys they're not going on vacation off of that, but it's a little bit of money, and then they see value in their trees, and then at least they're going to keep them and keep mowing them. So I think we've sourced from about 20 orchards over 3 years. And I think the farthest we've had to drive is, this last year, we actually drove to Gaze Mills, which was about 75 miles. And that's the furthest we've ever had to go for apples. And someone asked about varieties too. There are a few varieties we absolutely stay away from. Red Delicious. Is there any use for a Red Delicious apple? I can't. There is no use for a Red Delicious. We've done some Red Delicious ciders. They're just not that interesting. So we're a little bit picky about variety, but honestly, like, you can kind of make it taste good. I mean, there's some apple purists out there who, I mean, I know there's some people who probably give me the sideways evil eye when I say that, but like, I don't know, the way I see it is if I can put use and value to a product that's 10 miles from here with a farmer that I know, and she's proud of it and I'm proud of it, then I call it a win, you know? I mean, I'm not going to worry too much, and our really good apples are going to go into ciders that we don't mess with at all. So anyone who's been here, we keep usually about 11 of our ciders on tap, but we have even more varieties in bottles. You know, if something's kind of a boring apple, maybe that's the one that we put hops into, or maybe we make that one into a sizer, which is when you add honey, or we did a roasted pumpkin cider this year, which was like, I was super skeptical, totally delicious. You know, like, we'll kind of throw a bunch of stuff at it and see how it goes. So especially for those commercial growers that have more of the quote unquote eating apples, non-cider apples, well, we can still use those. Like, I'm not a snob, let's put it that way. I'm not an apple snob. I'm a beef snob, though. I am a beef snob. So I think, you know, tying it back into conservation, we all love perennials. If I can keep a few more orchards on the landscape, and maybe it's not that I'm paying them enough to keep those orchards, but these, you know, these older people who own these orchards, they love to see the apples go to use. And, you know, we'll drop off a case of cider and they're happy and we're happy, because we get, sometimes with those older orchards, we're getting some really cool antique varieties and stuff that that we wouldn't get from like more of a commercial grower. And so I think it's, you know, it's good for wildlife to have the trees out there. It's good for the economy. I think it's just good for kind of local morale even. Like, we've got an orchard literally a mile outside Mount Horeb where the family bought it, and it kind of came with this orchard. And they are just so excited to have us out there picking apples, because they can come in and drink their cider. Like, how cool is that? They never expected that when they moved here. Because the other unique thing we do, and I think this is important because it gives that sense of place and community, is that we never mix apples from different orchards. So if we go to an orchard and pick apples and press them and bottle them, like, every bottle of cider you pick up from us says what orchard it's from, and we can tell you exactly where that orchard is. We do not cross orchards. The wild ones get a little weird, I'll give you that. Like, once in a while I cross the road or something, but for the most part, you're going to know where those exactly where those apples were grown and when they were grown, which I think is really cool. So that's the apple side of things. And that kind of, I mean, I've always been a bit of a local, I've always been a local food advocate, but for us, like, this just, it totally hit home. Like, it made so much sense to do apples. We live in the Driftless. Well, we've got an orchard over in Barneveld. You know, we're close to Gaze Mills and all these apples, and it for us, it just made a lot of sense to do that. And then going into the food end of things, that's something else I take really. I mean, I've spent 15 years of my life trying to get people to direct market products and graze their animals and make a unique product that's worth more money than what the market is paying. And so, hell if I wasn't going to source all my food in my restaurant from those same local farms that I've been working with for years. So I think I'll walk out there actually. And then maybe well, Dan's got some bottling left to do. I'll give you a quick tour in here. Can I flip this around? Hold on. Yeah, okay. So there's Dan. Hi, Dan. This is our cidery. Dan's working our bottler right now. So we've got a 4-head semi-automatic bottler, which means it puts the caps on for us, which is great. We've got some, I think these barrels in front of us are from Dancing Goat. Yep, we've got Dancing Goat up front here, Driftless Glen, and then we used to have some maple syrup ones around, but they're over here. So So what another thing we do is we do really small batches sometimes. So these are our little 30-gallon. All of these, it's hard to tell, but these are all fermenting away over here. All these little 30-gallon tanks. There's some barrels. Got some barrels. Those are our maple beer. Has anyone had maple bourbon aged maple syrup, which is a thing now? So after the syrup has been in there, that's those guys right there. We buy those barrels from the syrup maker, and then we put cider in them. They're absolutely delicious, I can tell you. These are kind of our bigger batch tanks over here. We've got 3 regular tanks and then a bright tank, and this tank right here, we call a bright tank, and that's because we can carbonate in that tank, so it can take some pressure. What else is interesting in here? There's some kegs. Mostly just Dan is interesting, so that's about it. Juice. I didn't really talk about juice, but I'll briefly mention. So we obviously we are picking and pressing all of our apples, and then we can't make it all at once, so we take it into a commercial frozen storage. So here's a label. We've got Gold Rush, Golden Delicious, and Pink Lady. Now, lots of people would call those eating apples. I would call those cider apples. Whatever, to each their own. So that's kind of the cidery end of things. It's much like a winery. Let me flip you back around here because a door is not that interesting. Hi. I'll just head out this way. And I'm gonna flip you back over. Hold on. I'm gonna just show you I've got a nice little poster here that says grinding and pressing apples for Brix. So this just shows that, we grind and press apples. And then we've got a nice little poster here that says picking apples, and it's because we pick most of the apples that we make into cider. And I say most because, like I said before, sometimes from some of our growers, we will, when they go take their apples through their sorters, we'll buy the sorted apples from them. So we actually technically didn't pick those. And then last year was the first year we partnered up with another local orchard and had him press most of our apples for us, because that got to be super crazy trying to pick apples and press them and all this. And it gave him, again, I'm going to go back to my community thing, it gave him a secondary source of income, and it kept his press going further into the year. And so that was a nice thing for him too. So anyway, I'm now in our tap room, which is closed. Yay. Fuck COVID. But we're open, but only on the patio right now. So what we did is, when the COVID hit, we decided to switch to a grocery service, almost like a CSA type of model, where we're sourcing from all these farms in March, and if we were to just close, they also would lose a bunch of their outlets for their food. So instead, we switched gears, and Matt and I were very familiar with the CSA model. We have been members. Matt worked on one, and so we just kind of switched over to groceries. So it's been a little weird, but it definitely floated us through those 3 months that we were closed. And sales have gone down with the grocery, but there's enough sales there to justify continuing to do it. And again, it's just like, as farmers markets aren't open, it's giving those producers another outlet to direct market their food to customers, which I think is, I'm not going to pretend I'm making a bunch of money selling groceries, but again, it's like a community service. It keeps our name out there, as we were closed for 3 months. And then I think it really kept a lot of our farmers solvent during that time, which is really important. So yeah, our tap room looks different than it has normally, but I'll flip this back around just to get an idea. I mean, I think, I'm not going to pretend like every business in the world. So what those little white stickers are, is that's going to tell you what farm the product is from. Right now, I'm probably sourcing from 20 to 25 local farms and producers. Anywhere from kind of like the Cambridge areas where I get my popcorn, all the way over to Driftless Organics in Viroqua is where I get black beans for our hummus. Did you know that you can make hummus out of black beans? It doesn't need to be garbanzo. Did I just blow your mind? I probably did. And it comes out a really cute purple color, so it's a bonus. So back to the conservation part of it. I mean, I'll admit, like, where I'm lucky is that I know farmers in the area. So if someone runs out of something, I can just call somebody else, and I know where to get stuff, you know, whether that's vegetables and calling another CSA and hoping to, you know, get some of their product in, or meat, or really anything. I mean, even all the grain I use is from Meadowlark Organics. We're sourcing our bread from either Crest Spring or Origin, both of whom use Meadowlark Organics. We make our own cornbread and things like that. That's all local grains. You know, the tough time is winter. I have to buy in greens from California, but other than that, we just we take the local thing pretty seriously. And sometimes we run out of stuff, and that's okay too. So I think as conservationists, we should, oh, there we go. We should, you know, we're always telling people, I feel like, well, maybe it's just me. I feel like I'm telling people that they should look to new markets and open up. Is it raining out? I don't think so, right? Maybe I'll go outside. Let it cool down a little bit. You know, we're always telling people, like, hey, you should, you know, look to new markets, or how can you diversify, right? You know, we're telling people to diversify in a system that doesn't promote diversity. And so it doesn't, you know, we have to start thinking about that as we look to diversify crop rotations. Well, like, if I'm telling you to add wheat back into rotation, there better be a market for it. You know, the grazers I work with, I've told all of them, like, before you even seed this down, like, go to your local brew pub and figure out if you can supply them with their burger. Don't try to supply them with steaks. You'll never be able to do that. But, like, you know, tell them, hey, I produce local beef, and ask them how many pounds they need a week, and then figure it out. You know, like, there's, like I said before, there's really no excuse for a restaurant in Wisconsin not serving a local hamburger. Every restaurant should have the name of the farm that they're sourcing their burger from. And I'm not saying it has to be grass-fed organic. I mean, yeah, I do that, but you don't have to. Like, I don't really care if it comes off a feedlot, as long as it comes from a feedlot down the road. I'm happier than it coming from the Cisco truck. And so I think we just, you know, we need to keep people accountable. We need to keep businesses accountable, and we need to reward people who are really doing a good job, and then push the people who aren't doing a good job. You know, you don't just write them off, but, like, ask your waitress where the beef is from, or, you know, do something, you know, I don't know, like, maybe help hook your farmer up with, you know, give them that extra push to go to the supper club down the street. I just think that it's really important that we don't just push the conservation end of things, but make sure that we're trying to change the system as a whole, and put our money where our mouth is. I mean, that's big, and it's uncomfortable, and we don't like to talk about stuff like that. But I do think it's really important, and it's we're doing our farmers a disservice if we're not doing stuff like that. So yeah, hey, right there's good. Yeah. So I don't know.
I think, can you guys hear Marie?
No, we can't hear you, Marie.
We can't hear you.
Nope. Good.
Oh, there we go. There we
Sorry,
go.
I must have hit the mute button. I was just asking if anyone had questions, or.
Yeah, we actually do have quite a few questions that have come in, so I will read them to you, if that's all right.
Sure.
And we will try to get to as many as we can here. All right, so the first question is it true that the cider industry is growing in the state? And if so, how many cideries are in Wisconsin currently?
I think some wineries are starting to realize that they can make cider. So we're seeing some of the local wineries do that. It's It's growing a little. I mean, I would say pre-COVID, maybe it was growing a little, and this is just going to put a stop to everything. I would guess there's about a dozen cideries in the state that are like pretty, active enough where you can buy their stuff on a shelf somewhere.
Great. How many apples are in a bottle of cider?
So in our 500 milliliter cider, we figure about 5 apples go into a 500 milliliter cider.
Okay, and I think you answered this one. How far do you have to travel to purchase your apples? You kind of, I think, touched on that.
Yeah, I think
A little bit.
75 is the furthest, but 50% of our apples come from an orchard about 5 miles as the crow flies. So.
All right, here's one. If trees aren't sprayed, are you concerned with wormy apples?
Nope. They can be wormy. They can't be rotten, but they can be wormy.
Great. How far do you distribute?
Just Madison, and so we self-distribute our cider. We do not have a distributor. We keep all of that in-house. Distributors take about 30% off the top, and we don't have enough production to do that. So right now, your best bet is coming here.
Or bring a bunch to our next in-person meeting.
Or that.
You kind of touched on this a little bit. What is the difference between an eating apple and a cider apple? What varieties do you prefer to use?
Yeah, it depends on who you ask. So there's definitely some cider people who they draw a line in the sand, and there are cider apples and there are eating apples. I tend to think that line is a little bit more blurry, and I think more and more often people are seeing the blur in that line. And the reason is that like highly managed eating apples are going to be in a cider a little bit of a thinner cider. Like they're going to be super juicy and crisp, and we all want to bite into one of those. But their sugar content, which is called Brix, so that's why we're called Brix Cider. It's how you measure sugar in a fruit. You'll get a lower sugar content with those really highly managed perfect apples, where even an eating apple that's kind of left to its own defenses is going to concentrate sugars a lot more, make a much kind of almost a better mouthfeel, but like a thicker, higher alcohol, sugarier juice, which will lead to a higher alcohol cider. And so, we try to balance that out even within an orchard. But then there's people who grow specific cider apples, and a lot of those come from Europe. Those varieties are like French and English. And we've grown a few of those in our orchard, and we are not great orchardists. I'm not going to pretend like I'm like a stellar orchardist or farmer by any means. I am not. But those are pretty weak apples here. They're just not meant for our climate. So what Matt and I have really focused on our orchard is we probably have about 80 varieties of apples. We're trying to find American cider varieties. So we want varieties that grow well here. And so we will collect wild apples and we will graft them in our small nursery, and we'll plant those out in our orchard. And then we're also working with people like Dan Bussey, who, if you don't know Dan Bussey, you should Google it. Dan Bussey, Bussey. He's like the apple guy, and he happens to be from Edgerton, Wisconsin. And he wrote a 7-volume set of apples. Anyway, Google Dan Bussey. He's great. We harvest from his home orchard over in Edgerton, and he has about 200 varieties there. And then we have also been propagating his apples. So that's kind of the long answer for cider apples. Sorry. We're into the local stuff, if you can't tell.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Here's an interesting question. Does cider age in the bottle like wine?
It ages fairly well, not 15 years, but we like a cider that's 2 or 3 years in a bottle, for sure.
I have a question. Do you guys ever participate in any of the local beer festivals where they have, they have the different types of beer, but then they also have cider?
yeah, we do a bunch of the local ones. It's a good advertising mechanism for us. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Or we did.
Yeah, I know.
That's all right. Next year.
What prevents your distribution further out, like from distributing beyond Madison?
Yeah, I mean, we physically drive the cider to the liquor store. So like if you go to the co-op, like until Dan came to us in a halo of wonderfulness, Dan is my favorite. I was literally dropping that cider off. So I'd go into work with a trunk full of cider, and after work I would drive around Madison schlepping cider around. And that is, one, not economical. I can tell you that. There's no economy of scale there. It's terrible. And two, I was just really tired and usually pregnant, which was terrible. So yeah.
Do you,
so that's why.
Well, we're getting a lot of requests for cider in Eau Claire. So sounds like Christina is going to help bring some over to Eau Claire next time she heads that direction.
Cool. Cool. Sounds good.
Does anyone have any other questions? Oh, I know. What about your poll questions that you had 2 poll questions that were really, I think, interesting. One about the honeybees and I think the apples.
Yeah.
So, oh, here we go.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
So I'll explain. So we make one of our ciders is half the sugar comes from honey and half the sugar comes from apples. So that's what I'm talking about with this one, with this question. I'm going to answer it right, and we'll see what other people do. I was really sad when I did the calculation. If that, I don't know how people will take that as a clue or not, but okay. So let me know when I can give the answer.
Okay, Dan will let us know once we're done voting.
Yeah, still a few
People are, like, sitting there
answers
on their
coming in.
calculators, Googling how much honey does a bee make.
Okay, we'll publish it here so everybody can see it.
Hey, nice job, you guys. It's 72 bees. It takes
Oh, wow.
72 bees their entire lifetime to make enough honey for 1 bottle of that cider right there. Now, I don't know about you guys, but that makes me kind of sad that 72 little bees put their life into this. So the best I can do is like do my best job to make it something really delicious and special and make sure that people appreciate what goes into a bottle of that. So yeah.
Let's see. I think, Dan, was there one more poll question that we had?
Yeah, I think this one was actually answered, but we'll.
Yeah,
pop
my
it up
apple
here.
one was answered.
Yeah.
It's 5, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, we can
That one.
test and see how many people were listening.
We're listening. I should have done that. Right? Sorry.
Okay, we had just a couple more questions come in. Is your pear cider on tap?
The Perry, yeah, of course. Yes, it is. And it's super funky. You want to know what a wild fermentation tastes like? Come try our Perry. It's good. You gotta be open to it. But it's delicious. It's most of the ciders we make, we're going to use a commercial yeast, but I don't know, several times a year we'll let the wild yeast kind of do their job. So we did it on the Perry, and that's 100% pear cider. And we got those apples, actually a really cute little orchard just east of Madison that called us one day and said he had a bunch of pears. So we came out and picked them.
Oh, for those who haven't tried pear cider, it's really good.
Mm-hmm.
Really good. Great. Well, thank you, Marie. This has been so exciting and one of a kind tour. So we can't wait till we get to hold our next county con meeting at your place, right, Matt?
There we go. There's a hotel
or
in
a
Mount
board
Morris.
meeting. We could do a board meeting.
There you go.
Staff retreat.
Staff retreat. Okay, forget that. Staff retreat for sure.
You should bike out here. So we're located right on the Military Ridge bike path.
Okay,
Our
Done
path
We're going
deal.
to spend the next
on
20
the bike
minutes
path.
planning our staff retreat. You guys can.
there we go. Absolutely. Well, it was fabulous. Thank you so much for being available today and doing this great tour, and all the shout outs that you gave to the breweries in Driftless area, and how important local farming is and sourcing local resources. So thank you. We really appreciate it.